Okay, so we're going to explain how to solve quadratic equations in this video. Now, solving quadratic equations is all made by if you have multiple numbers multiplied together to give you 0, then one of the numbers or more must be 0. Okay, because that's the only way you get 0 from multiplication. So that's why we use our factorization skills in solving quadratic equations. So you can solve quadratic equations using your the factors, because the factors are multiplied together, so one or more of the factors must be equal to 0. So for example, if we have this, just keep it for through, sorry. Okay, so if we want to solve this equal to 0, because of the three factors multiplied together give me 0, so that means one or more must be 0. Obviously 3 does not equal to 0, so that's not solution. Then you will end up with x plus 6 equals 0, or x minus 2 equals 0. And then from there you can see you've got a linear equation that you're going to solve. So just rearrange, so it will be x equal -6 or x equal 2. So those are the two solutions for this equation here, or the two roots for this equation here. Okay, so this is one way of solving equations, by using factorization, or you can use a quadratic formula, and we're going to discuss the quadratic formula later in that video. Okay, so let's take another example in here. So this is a slightly harder example. Okay, so we've got an equations in here. So you've got a fraction and multiplied by 4. So the best way to do this is you either factorize and try to simplify. Well, I'm not sure if that will, if you factorize and then you try to simplify, you can tell that the bottom one cannot be factorized, because sorry, actually you can, but I'm not sure there is a common factor in between, because the bottom one can be factorized to 2 and 3, and the numerator can be factorized to 6 and 1, and they both, there is no common factor between, so it can cancel out. So that means we will have to do cross multiply first to get rid of the denominator. So we will do cross multiply. That's where you end up with this. Okay, so we'll just minus 24. Now we rearrange to make it equal to 0, because the first rule to solve quadratic equation, it must be equal to 0. So we're going to rearrange to make it equal to 0. So I'm moving everything to the other side. So we've got 3x squared. So we rearrange and collect like terms. So we've got 3x squared plus 9x minus 30 equals 0. And remember, now we need to factor. Once it's equal to 0, then you start factorizing. And remember, the first rule of factorization, we'll look for the common factor. So we'll get 3 is a common factor. And now we will look for the two factors that multiply to -10 and adds to 3. And that's obviously it's -5, sorry, +5 and -2. Okay, so we'll factorize in here. So it will be x plus 5 and x minus 2 equals 0. So now 3 does not equal to 0. So that's why we'll do x plus 5 equals 0, or x minus 2 equal to 0. So it's x equal -5 or x equal to 2. So those are the two solutions for that quadratic equation. Okay, the second way to solve quadratic equation is using quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula, it's this here, and it's in your formula sheets. So I'm just writing the quadratic formula on the side. It's all based on the general quadratic equation. Okay, so that's the general formula of the quadratic equations. It must be equal to 0, and that's the coefficient of x squared is a, coefficient of x is b, and the constant by itself is c. So the quadratic equation, which is in your formula sheets, is this: x equal negative b positive negative square root of b square minus 4ac over 2a. Okay, so you just plugged in the coefficient. So for example, we'll just do example in here. 2x squared plus, so it's 2x squared plus 10x minus 18. So a, that means a is 2, b is 10, c is negative 18. So now we're going to substitute in the formula. Negative 10 positive negative square root of b squared is 100 minus 4 times 2 is 8 times 18 144, and because it's negative 18, so it's positive 144, and over 2 times a, which is 4. Okay, and now you're gonna work it out. So we've got negative 10 positive negative 100 plus 144 over 4. Right, so now you either simplify the square root of 244 into, because 244 comes from 61 times 4, and 4 is a square number, so you can get it out of the square root. So you either write your answer like this, and then you take the 2 as a common factor, that simplify, and your final answer is this. So you either write your answer like this, or you can use your calculator and find what is the square root of 244. It's 15, approximately 15.6. So you would write your answer. I'm just going to write it in a different color. So you say x equal negative 10 positive, plus 15.6 over 4, or x equal negative 10 minus 15.6 over 4, and you get the answer for this on the calculator. Okay, so for the first one, so for that first answer is 1.4, 1 just rounding, and then next one is negative 6.41. So those are the two answers. Continuing solving equations, it could be an example like that, for example. So you don't expand every time when you want to solve equations, because when you expand you'll have to refactorize again. If it is equal to 0, so we can just say either the first factor equals 0, or x squared minus 64 equal 0. Then you solve each one separately, as we said before. So x equal 4 over 3, or x squared equals 64, so x equal positive negative 8. Okay, because so you've got 3 different solutions in here: 4 over 3, positive 8, and negative 8. Do another 2 more examples. So here, before we factorize, we try to simplify it. So by reducing the power, so you can see here is you can divide everything by x. and that will result of moving the x, reducing the power of x. And now rearrange. And now you can solve it either using the quadratic formula, or you can solve it using the factorization, or you can even use your graphic calculator for that. So I'm using the graphic calculator at the moment, and that gives me either x equal half or x equal -5.